fellow crafters, Janine here with another card project. This is a thank you card to my pastor for Pastor Appreciation Month and his wife, because she does give a lot to our church as well, and not only what she does but in the time that she sacrifices with him to minister to our church congregation. So anyway, this is one of those little cards that just could it just seemed like I had more trouble putting this card together. More things went wrong. I think mainly because I wasn't paying as much attention to the finer details and such that I should have. But it's just one of those that I almost didn't put it on YouTube because of all the mistakes. But then realized that we all have those moments, and maybe it's good for everyone to see, you know, how do you work with those mistakes and not just throw an entire project in the trash because it didn't go the way you wanted it to. So hopefully this card inspires you to work around mistakes and make something of it anyway. So anyway, if you'd like to see how I made this card, stay tuned. I started by trimming all of my paper pieces that I was going to use down to size. I used this craft cardstock as my card base. And then the white piece you saw me cut is where I'm going to be doing the background for the sentiments and everything. So I checked the size to make sure everything was fitting together correctly. Then on a piece of cardboard, I just taped down that white piece of paper. And using a polka dot stencil and some of my Memento ink, little dewdrop ink pads, I just stenciled on a background, and I just used makeup sponges as my daubers. And here I'm just picking out a watercolor background that I want to use for my sentiments that I'm going to be stamping. So I'm picking out inks that coordinate with those colors of that watercolor. I started with Pear Tart as the lightest color in the center, and then with Cottage Ivy I went around the outside of that and kind of a circular motion, and then I moved the stamp to the four corners to finish stamping around the outside. And for that I used Danube Blue as my darkest color, and I think it made a really lovely little background. I really enjoy using the stencils and inks to create different looking backgrounds, and I'm definitely enjoying watercoloring for different backgrounds as well. You can just really customize the look of a card and everything be so coordinated using these methods. So I realized here that I had smeared a little bit of ink on the kind of middle right side of that paper, and here I just trimmed it down just a little bit more so you wouldn't see where it was taped. But I tried to erase it because sometimes if the ink's still wet enough it will erase, but it didn't. And so I thought about starting over and decided, no, I'm going to work with it. I'm just going to place things strategically to cover it. So I used a couple of stamps from two May Made It stamp sets. I used Thankful from Divine Emotions, and then I cut off Before You from one of the sentiments on her Sweet Treat stamp set. And I gave him a test stamp, and then went ahead to my watercolor paper, and for that I'm using Rich Cocoa for the stamping, and then I stamped them in the locations I wanted on the watercolor paper, and then just used my guillotine cutter to trim them down to size. And I placed the Thankful over the worst of the smeared ink, and I used some foam adhesive to kind of pop them up a little bit, give them a little more dimension. And I still had just a little bit of smeared ink. Oh wait, before we get there, then I realized this is another mistake. We're up to mistake number 2. I had wanted to use this blue and white baker's twine to add just a little bit of something extra in between the two sentiments, and so I'd peeled the paper up a little bit to place the twine, and then realized I had adhered everything upside down. So I had to peel it off completely and re-adhere it in the right direction. So that would be up to mistake number 3. But it gave me a chance to really get that baker's twine placed where I wanted it. And then realized I still had some ink smearing, so I decided to use some sequins and some glue dots to go ahead and cover the rest of the smears. And I did my best to kind of place them and make them look a little bit random. didn't look quite the way I wanted them to look, but it ended up looking okay. You can't see it as well on camera as in person. It did add a little sparkle and shine. The sequins did stand out from the background more than you realize here on camera. But I used the green and blue sequins to coordinate with the background and the watercoloring. So at this point I was pretty well satisfied with the way everything looked. So we're coming up to mistake number 4. I trimmed up a white background, which is what I was going to adhere and write my message on the inside. Well, you can see I used some liquid glue to do that, and here I'm stamping my Handmade by Janine Rick stamp on the back before I get to do all that, and realized that glue was a bad choice because it was thick, it wasn't spreading out and laying flat, it was kind of bumpy. So I started to peel it off and start over, and I thought, no, I can just add some more mats, add a little thickness here, and then you won't really notice the dimension of the glue. So I just trimmed out some decorative paper and coordinating colors with what I'd already done, and some more craft paper to write my sentiment on, and then I just used some two-sided tape, which I was having very difficult time finding the end of, so I guess that'd be about mistake number 5. So I just scored it with a pair of scissors to start a new end, and then just use this two-sided tape to adhere those mats, because at this point I was out of tape runner tape and no refills left. I really don't like using this two-sided tape because I don't have a dispenser for it, and it's very difficult to play with because of that, but it did save the day. It allowed me to get everything adhered. So that's why I started to use the liquid glue to begin with, was because I was out of my tape runner and I really didn't want to use this two-sided tape. But it did the trick, did the job, helped me finish this card up, did a little cleanup, picked everything up, and it's all done. Well, as you can see, overcoming mistakes sometimes, and you end up with a great product. And at the end of the day, I'm really happy with the way that this little card turned out. I think it's cute, I think it's to the point, and I think my pastor and his wife are really going to appreciate it, and they're going to appreciate that it's handmade and that they were thought of in a special way. So thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you guys, and if you can, please remember to give me a thumbs up, rate, comment, and subscribe, because I really love hearing from you guys. Y'all have a blessed day.